the morning sun on the hillside, not leaving good.
Good afternoon. Episode 12, World Better Faster. Facebook, not working well. Super glitchy, giving me an error message that I don't have an internet connection. Maybe they don't want me to have an internet connection. That's what it is. They're trying to control me and prevent me from getting my voice out because I'm so revolutionary and dangerous. Not worried. Anyway, I'm a rebel. I'm a soul rebel. Today is about, well, the revolution and just being me and you just being you, putting our lives on the line on purpose, why it matters, how it's okay to fumble on the way there, and specifically, suis ROJAVA. And it was me, complicity, our involvement in, everything, and mine in particular with the Me Too meme, which is huge. And the complimentary one, it was me taking responsibility for our part in that as men, as people, complicit with a lot of what goes on, what's not okay in the world, how to deeply address that, personally address that in all that we do, how we communicate and how we are. And how that runs through as a theme for me in this year, especially in the latter part of the year, about my complicity, my involvement, my, active or passive involvement in the problems. And what I'm trying to do about that, and that's that heroic soul rebel action. So, episode 12 is about all that. Je suis eurotrash, je suis Harvey, je suis president. Je suis the PeoplesParty in Austria, je suis ROJAVA and the Democratic Federation of Northern Syria. Je suis Mehmet Aksoy, the hero of the day. We'll get into all that today. What is the way to optimal? Especially when it seems kind of lumpy like this, it's a good question to ask. And today's sponsor is the Democratic Federation of Northern Syria, looking for you to take up the model of radical contemporary democracy and consensual society wherever you are, in the polity, in the system of your own being, with your body, and listening to all your parts in your community, and trying to bring that to the community at large. Amazing how a place that's war-torn and struggling can leapfrog ahead in many ways, at least in aspirations, in attempting to bring more consensus-based systems that respect the rights of women, all voices, all ethnicities, all religion, in a very profoundly struggling part of the world where they're also having to fight for their right to even live this way. And they've been a successful, spearhead against the local extremist totalitarian military forces of ISIL or ISIS or whatever. And anyway, we'll get more into that in a moment, but let's look at this thread. Je suis. I am. It was me. And, coming out of a 28-year marriage into separation and greater independence, and this meme coming up, Me Too, just has me own the responsibility that I have for not having been impeccable, not even that good at times, pressuring my ex to to have sex to satisfy me, to keep me happy, and not owning my own sexuality and taking responsibility for that completely is juvenile, totalitarian, authoritarian, pathetic, and very real. And so that's within a marriage, and that's within a long-term relationship with someone who I still count to be my best friend. And so, and that any of that attitude and mistaken understanding about how to go about anything should have been present in our family relations, in anything that could have passed on indirectly to my kids, to my girls. That I would even be more like mortified, ashamed of, and own that too. Though I think and I feel that both my girls actually are pretty strong and pretty clear about it, but boy do they feel, and boy have they had to deal with the Me Too in their lives, in the world that they're in. So that's a first level of complicity, and there were a couple of posts today talking about it was me, that it doesn't take very much imagination for many men to understand the abuse of power and privilege that we have had in this world, and so owning that is a big deal. And I'm going to really wind through a number of philosophical threads that show my understanding of the level of complicity, and in that way, I'm Harvey. And I don't think I've pushed so much, maybe if ever, never, on other people, other women, I can't recall too much in this part of my life or over the last, 30 years where that was a really big part of what I did. I wasn't that kind of a person, but within the relationship, yeah. And, so what's the big difference really? Just, more selective about where I caused the damage with someone closer to me. So Harvey, where there's power, where we have that concentration of power, I'm going to get into the root cause. One is ownership and having a sensitivity and awareness of real consent, and that love comes in a field of trust and tenderness. And so having conditions where tenderness, sensitivity, and people's voices, authentic voices, can easily come out, where they don't feel like they're going to be bowled over, they're going to be fired, they're afraid, they're not going to get the job, they're not going to have the investment, they're not going to get the love if they don't put out, if they don't express themselves. So we need a place and a field and a space where people feel that consent is easy, is safe. And those consensual environments begin in how we conduct ourselves in circle, in community, in enterprise, everywhere. In every place where the loud voice will tend to dominate, where power tends to express itself strongly, with ease, we need to create extra space, extra care for tenderness and gentleness in all the spaces that we share responsibility for. And our complicity at that level is to not allow the domination of voices and to leave ample space for everyone to be heard. And that includes people, doing emotional sabotage of meetings and consuming it with their moment and their thing all at once. The important piece is that when your intuition is calling in a moment, in a group meeting with your lover, that you can say what's coming up and what's being felt and that the others can hear it. Or that you can say, I need to take some time after this meeting to talk about some of these things, and have the courage to write it down and be patient for the right moment to talk about things. But everything gets to be heard. Everything has a safe moment to be received. And that, again, going from, Harvey Weinstein and how we solve those abuses of power is by shifting how power is distributed. And, that harkens to yesterday's conversation about the blockchain and Bitcoin. New governance systems, new economic systems that are less concentrated, that don't depend on hierarchies or centers of authority and power. When the power is more distributed, then the consent required for decisions to flow will always include some people to make sure that everybody is heard. And it takes some real courage in the times that we're in to start to let go the reins and expand to that kind of distributed power, distributed decision-making, collaborative intelligence, scientific citizenship, where all the data, all the evidence, and all the voices are heard and allowed. These are all key terms and concepts to understand and expand how we conduct ourselves in enterprise, in community, and in governance and government. So one of the key examples that's really surprising and beautiful, and I'll post the link to this in the Facebook post or in my Facebook thread, is the story of Rojava, or Western Kurdistan in northern Syria, is this part of the Kurdish homeland that's all divided up between Syria, Turkey, And I think Iraq, they're like, their country is like, there is no country. So they've kind of given up on having a country. And yet, in fighting for their rights in northern Syria, have opted to experiment with models of inclusion of women in the forms of government and having representation from Christian, Muslim, and I think there's another, and then Kurdish communities, each ethnic and religious communities, key communities, each represented on key councils and places of power. Women are in the army and key in decision making, apparently. I mean, you got to wonder how that could just like rise up in a real egalitarian way in what is, not typically known to be, a Western society where that would be supported, and yet they're going there in Kurdistan, in this part of the Kurdish world in northern Syria. And this while they're fighting wars to defend their turf against the Syrian government, or just to make sure that they're asserting their autonomy as much as they can, and also fighting against the forces of ISIS to expel them from their area because of the authoritarian threat to their way of life. So they're accomplishing this, and it's pretty, the way that this person who is a hero of the movement and a great speaker and an advocate for this concept of federated democracy, based in part, inspired in part on the Swedish system, but equally on the American federal system. Mehmet Aksoy, A-K-S-O-Y, died in, a bomb attack yesterday in one of these assaults on, expelling ISIS from one of the last towns that they're in. And he died, but he was a hero of the movement and a voice for the sanity and the radical democratic nature of what the Kurdish community has been doing and trying to realize, and they're part of it. And that, as this article describes, as he put it, they want pluralistic democratic self-determination for themselves and others in a newly federated Syria, discarding the nationalist project that led to the Iraqi referendum. As Mehmet put it, not to create a new state, but to create a revolutionary, educated, modern, self-conscious, and genuinely democratic society. So stop calling us separatists. He's not trying to separate. He's trying to do it within Syria so that we don't create more borders, so we don't create more divisiveness. We don't need the Brexit. We need more engaged, localized autonomy and expression of our power and decision-making individually and within communities. So when we take our power in Topanga, when we take our power in California, when we take our power in the United States, well, this is where it expands into the bigger concept of je suis president. I'm the president. Little detour. I was at an event this weekend in Ojai. A friend hosts a beautiful event, and at the end of it, he invites us to this hot springs that, he and a group of people purchased because it was available. It was a kind of quasi-public resource previously, but a mess with beer bottles and broken things and cigarette butts around. They cleaned it up, charged a nominal rate of $10 a visit. It now breaks even. It looks beautiful. It hosts anyone who wants to go, just booking ahead of time or just rolling in and signing a waiver. And in there, just what a beautiful space to be. As I step into the tub, a couple of friends are like asking me, so what happened with your Senate campaign? Are you still going to continue with that? I looked at him. I was like, actually, I'm president. He's like, president of what? I'm like, president of the United States. So are you. And so are you and you. We are president, and we're just not taking up our job. As I explained yesterday, the need for representative democracy came in a time when we couldn't communicate regularly, where we couldn't distribute decision-making among our peers, our trusted amateur expert friends and relatives to advise us and say, this solution for healthcare, that solution for the foster youth, this for our economic policy. We can actually direct them. We don't need a representative democracy so much as we need a participatory democracy and a way of gathering our collective intelligence, prioritizing our decisions and what we choose to optimize, and then doing it in a way that's based on evidence. So scientific citizenship, collaborative intelligence, counsel, consensual decision-making, and then giving those decisions to our leaders to optimize and to negotiate with other lawmakers and so on. It'll still involve a level of representation, but much less dependence on that assignment of our power away from us. giving a much clearer frame of reference and range of direction to our representatives so they know the bounds of where they can work on our behalf. This is what's necessary. We are president. Je suis, and in that way it's complex. Je suis Donald Trump. When I let the masculine be in its power unhinged and unchecked, je suis Donald Trump. When I let our government go on this way, when we let our government go on this way without engaging to take on at least as much as we want to find out about, to become an amateur expert in 1, 2, or 3 things, when we don't take command and control of our ownership of our responsibility, of getting informed about a few things and then sharing that with friends and family in an intelligent way, when we don't do that, we're complicit. We're giving up our responsibility. We're abdicating our responsibility, and we are President Trump. We are Harvey Weinstein for not changing the way that decision-making happens in media so that we, the consumers of media, can choose content where the supply chain goes all the way back to the producers, all the way back to the writers. What are their values? Are they consistent with the values that I have, and do they represent what I care about? Are they behaving consistently with the values they talk about and that we talk about? I want to buy food that's in alignment with my values. I want to buy media I want to give my attention to news and newsmakers and people who tell stories that are in alignment with my values. They don't have to be perfect, but at least trying and willing to be transparent about where they are and how they're imperfect. So these 2 parts to it, to really having an improved democratic society, is a place to be comfortable, so where consensus can allow flawed human beings to express themselves and to exist, where we take responsibility for the information and for the decisions that we make as a society, and where we don't wait for someone else to fix the government or for a revolution to happen that'll still require an election. Right? How else are you going to... We have a revolution, and we still have to elect people to make decisions. No revolution will escape the need for the same kind of system we have now, and it still requires more participation, more information. Before or after the revolution, it's the same us, it's the same lack of information, it's the same lack of coordination, it's the same lack of prioritization. It's really important that we find a way to get to common ground on things that a strong majority of people, independents and free-thinking people predominantly, which is the largest single self-described group in America. More than Democrats, more than Republicans, there are more independents. And I think if we stand up and we just show our common sense, our willingness to look for the best optimization paths, the best common sense solutions based on what actually works and that has the least disagreement between right and left. If we focus on those things first, we will fix America. We will fix the key things that need fixing first, and with the confidence and success in fixing a few big things, we'll fix the rest. So, the courage to participate in this revolution, just being this guy under a tree in Topanga and just spieling on Facebook, or if it doesn't work on YouTube, whatever works to be able to hone my voice. You do the same. Find my truth. Learn about the things that I care about, which are pretty numerous. I'm passionate and I'm making all the time that I possibly can for these key force multipliers for change, to discern and discover which I think are the most valuable places to put my attention and to recommend them to you. That's what World Better Faster is. World Better Faster is my looking for the keystone, the force multipliers to yield change in the world. And one of the key ones is to take responsibility. Je suis Harvey Weinstein. Je suis, me too, a victim. Je suis complicit. It was me. Je suis ROJAVA, the Federated Democracy of Northern Syria. Je suis Charlie Hebdo, for that matter. And when I was at Burning Man, this was the most embarrassing of all. I kept going to places where I thought the best music was going to be, and the music was good. But then it got overcrowded with like these very wealthy people with perfect outfits, some of them really obnoxiously wearing Indian headdresses and such, clueless, speaking German. And it's je suis eurotrash. I did it like this. There's eurotrash here. Look at that. I gotta leave. I'm out of here. And I couldn't go to my favorite dance places because it was so overrun with apparently a large number of eurotrash that were showing up for the eclipse, which is interesting and ironic that the eclipse itself would draw out the darkness of the most successful and dominant forces in the world. The European culture dominates. Anglo-Saxon, Germanic, Northern European dominates. Some of them are very nice. They're deferential, especially, those Nordic countries. They try to do socialist stuff. But, as soon as they get a significant number of immigrants, they really don't like it there. Neither in Sweden, Norway, Denmark, all big racist insurgencies, nationalist insurgencies there. In the U.S., with the rise of a lot of non-whites in this country, there's pushback from that here. In Austria, they just elected the People's Party, a right-wing party, and two more further right-wing parties getting significant shares of the vote for the first time, an explicitly right-wing, nationalist, Nazi-descended party, winning 13% of the vote. Breitbart News and Steve Bannon fanning the flames and Donald Trump giving the okay to that. The right wing attached in its way to Brexit, the right wing in Italy, the right wing in Austria, right? So this whole thing and this recent election in Germany where there was like that right wing thing percolating, and Hungary. So what's going on? That European entitlement, that male white entitlement, and the dismay that any of it is going to be compromised, the resistance to that, the bitterness about that, and that it's mostly on the backs of poor whites is apparently leading to something like this. When Angela Merkel invites millions of Syrians into Germany, and they're not moving into wealthy neighborhoods, they're not moving into liberal enclaves, they're moving into places that are not reeling, but the most vulnerable to lack of work, jobs, and the least able to integrate diversity, and without a great history of doing that. In the United States, at least, we have the practice and the myth that it's important here. But over there, I was just imagining, as soon as I heard millions of Syrians coming into Germany, how's that going to play out? And the same thing in Austria. And I think it's important to welcome people into our country, but I think it's even more important that we go assertively to help rebuild society there so that they can create in their own places, like they're doing in, Western Kurdistan, in Rojava, that they can create their own places that they want to be in and help them rebuild at home. I do think it's too much of a burden for most of Germany, Northern Europe, and so on to take in immigrants. I think they really are a little bit too closed, and to do it more incrementally is what it is. They are not pluralistic societies. They don't have that common mythology in each of them. They really identify with their ethnic origins and their tribal origins, and I'm sympathetic to that. I feel, I understand the desire for that in Israel, in Palestine, with even if it's in many ways a fairly recently formed identity, it's a legitimate identity, even if it's in juxtaposition to the strength of the Israeli nationalist identity. That in itself will just form a very strong Palestinian counterpoint. It's a natural byproduct when you see people identifying their authentic soul self, even if it's cultural, ethnic, and created. People drop into that. You have community values, you have Burning Man values. All these things are tribal identities, and they can be valuable and beautiful, and it's important to respect how they emerge, but to do it in a way where we can each acknowledge and own our sense of identity and be gentle and be tender about allowing other people's identities to express, and to find and help them find the place for their own to be expressed safely as ours feel they can be expressed where we are. Now, I know it's a complex concept, but when I was at Burning Man and I saw this obnoxious, not participatory presence of the Eurotrash at Burning Man, I had to own what my daughters, especially my younger daughter Callie has always been, harping on, like, you don't realize the extent of your male privilege, your white privilege. And I'm starting to tune into it and see it. In as much as at so many meetings of the conversations I was excited about at Burning Man, there was an apology from the panel organizers at almost every one. I know we're like 4 guys, we're 5 white guys, but we couldn't find anyone. And I'm looking at my own projects where it's all white guys in projects that are supposed to be helping the world, and that's me. Je suis eurotrash. I am insensitive to the violations towards others. I am insensitive to the violations and the vulnerability of women, people of color, First Nations, minorities around the world, people with less money. So to just begin to own that is an important piece of the puzzle. So what can you do? What do? I dedicate myself to my part in the revolution, to being transparent and owning my privilege and blind spots to the extent that I can. I'm committed to acting for the things that I believe in will be force multiplier changes to utterly alter the landscape that makes what I have as an advantage benefit everybody, and where the risk of concentration of power and abuse of power will diminish. So I'm fighting for democracy. I'm fighting for radical democracy. I'm fighting for radical participation. I'm fighting for all of us to look clearly for what we think are the force multipliers for change, those few things that will help change everything else. Education, right? If everyone gets an education, everyone's informed, that's a big deal. If everyone learns how to live with health optimization and nourishment, that's a force multiplier. I mean, there's a lot of them. There's many, but the keystone ones are really where you enable people to be empowered and to affect greater change. And so for, me, the number one is participation in our democracy and getting informed about a few key things. And whatever issues you care most about, get more deeply informed. Share the best that you find, the best information and the best explanation, the best media and compilations of media and the best ideas. Share the very best evidence that you can find for every solution and every optimization. I don't really see so much point focusing on the problems. I think we all know the laundry list of all the problems. But the solutions and the optimizations we're not getting enough of. And better storytelling around those things. Those are things I really believe in are important. So I think that covers it for today. Have a wonderful evening. Je suis from Satnam Dachi. Over and out.